This isn't a rehash of old sightings. This isn't blurry footage or anonymous leaks. This is a direct testimony on record from someone who says he's been on the inside. I'm Mike, and today we're diving into one of the most compelling and explosive developments in the UAP story we've seen in a very long time. His name is Matthew Brown, and in a brand new interview with filmmaker and investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell, Brown drops a series of revelations that, if true, can change the game. We're talking about secret programs. We're talking about exotic materials. We're talking about non-human intelligence and a coordinated effort to keep the truth out of public reach. The codename at the center of it all? Well, it's Immaculate Constellation. And it refers to a long-standing global operation involving crash retrieval, reverse engineering of otherworldly craft, and classified intelligence about contact with something not from here. He's not whispering. He's not hiding behind the shadows. He's saying it with his face on camera and backed by years of alleged government experience. We're going to break down everything Brown revealed in part one of that interview. What we know, what's still unclear, and what might be coming next. We'll look at who Matthew Brown is and why his voice matters right now. What Immaculate Constellation actually means. The claims that link this to other major whistleblowers like David Grush, and how this could finally force the conversation mainstream, just in time for the May 12 UAP congressional hearings over in the US. But that's just the surface, because we're also going to ask some of the harder, deeper questions. What does this mean for us? Why is most of the world still silent, even when credible people are stepping forward? And what's it going to take for this story to break wide open into something that no government, media outlet, or civilian can ignore? This isn't theory. This isn't speculation. This is the beginning of a multi-part deep dive into what could be the real first step towards disclosure. Or the clearest sign yet that it's already happening behind closed doors. Let's take a moment to talk about the man at the center of this unfolding story, Matthew Brown. He's not a household name yet. But if what he's saying is true, he may go down as one of the most significant whistleblowers in the history of UAP disclosure. Matthew Brown is a former military intelligence officer who says he was embedded in programs that dealt directly with non-human technology. That includes physical craft, some intact, some not, and biologics that, in his words, are not of terrestrial origin. He's not speaking anonymously. He's not hiding behind voice distortion or shadowy backdrops. He's come forward on camera with his real name, and what he says is a detailed account of a deeply classified global effort, one that spans decades, crosses borders, and is operating with little to no public oversight. Now, we've heard bold claims before in this space, from Bob Lazar to David Grush, but Brown's account isn't just an echo. He says he was positioned as a liaison between US intelligence agencies and private aerospace contractors, giving him access to both operational recovery efforts and the downstream analysis of materials. According to him, these aren't just unidentified flying objects. They're technologies that challenge our understanding of physics, biology, and consciousness itself. And perhaps more importantly, he claims this knowledge isn't hidden because it's uncertain. It's hidden because it's too disruptive. The kind of truth that doesn't shift your worldview. It reshapes everything from the ground up. Brown also talks about internal simulation drills that were run within the intelligence community. Scenarios exploring what would happen if the public suddenly knew the full extent of the truth. And the results? They were mixed. Some scenarios showed global cooperation, curiosity, and even unity. Others showed panic, collapse of trust, institutional breakdown. And so Brown says the default strategy has been containment, not out of malice, but out of fear that we're not ready. We're not dealing with science fiction, he says. We're dealing with science that's not public yet. Unlike Grush, who had to carefully word his congressional testimony, Brown speaks more freely. He names the overarching structure behind it all, Immaculate Constellation. A networked, compartmentalized program that, if real, represents the most secretive and significant black project in modern history. He outlines a layered approach, recovery teams, reverse engineering divisions, information suppression units, all designed to prevent these discoveries from disrupting what he calls the accepted illusion of control. And if you're wondering why he's speaking now, here's the answer. Because he believes the illusion is starting to crack. He says more people inside the system are talking. That the weight of this secret is becoming too heavy to carry. And the longer we wait to acknowledge it, the more damage we risk doing to science, to trust, and to ourselves. Now look, we're not saying you have to believe him outright, but the man is calm, precise. He's not selling a book, not angling for clicks. He's putting himself at risk to get this out, and that alone is worth paying attention to. So we've established who Brown is and why his voice carries weight. But what exactly is Immaculate Constellation? Where does this program operate? And what kind of technology has it supposedly recovered? Let's talk about a name that sounds more like the title of a sci-fi novel than a classified program. Immaculate Constellation. It's mysterious, almost poetic. But according to Matthew Brown, it's very real. And it's not just a program, it's an entire framework. Brown says Immaculate Constellation is the codename for a deeply compartmentalized effort, a kind of black budget ecosystem dedicated to retrieving, analyzing, and in some cases reverse engineering materials that originate from non-human sources. Not just once, not just Roswell, but consistently across multiple continents for decades. According to him, Immaculate Constellation operates across military, intelligence, and private industry sectors. Some pieces live inside national labs. Others are managed through civilian contractors. It's a mosaic of secrecy. No single agency holds the full picture, and that's exactly how it was designed. Brown describes it as a constellation of silos, each with its own objective. Recovery teams trained to secure crash sites in hours, sometimes minutes, with strict protocols to remove and sanitize evidence. Materials labs studying exotic materials, isotopes, and nanostructures that appear engineered, but by methods no known human process could replicate. Biological analysis groups, which he says have handled samples that raise serious questions about the boundaries of life as we understand it. After all that, most controversially, neurological research divisions exploring how these craft and possibly their operators interface with consciousness itself. We're not just studying machines, Brown says. We're studying the frameworks behind them, and they don't follow the rules we know. Let's pause there for a moment, because that is big. What he's suggesting is that it isn't just about advanced propulsion or exotic alloys. He's suggesting these technologies interact with the observer, that their behavior may be influenced by human perception, emotion, or even intent. Wow. Now, to some, that sounds like mysticism. But Brown says these ideas have been quietly explored behind the scenes since the early Cold War. He even references internal disputes, where some teams wanted to pursue the tech as engineering problems, whilst others believed we were looking at something more like a consciousness-based system. The materials? He says they're like nothing we've ever seen in public science. They're ultra lightweight, layered at the atomic scale. They're reactive to electromagnetic fields in unusual ways. Some of them allegedly contain stable isotopes not found naturally on Earth. He also claims that there are multiple intact craft, some of which are stored at off-site facilities, often disguised under advanced aerospace testing initiatives. These are facilities that appear mundane on the surface, but underground house vaults of unknown origin, sealed behind layers of access control and legal firewalling. And here's something that stood out. Brown says the majority of scientists working on these projects don't even know where the craft came from. Their job is purely to study the materials and not to ask questions. But really, it's the classified, compartmentalized structure. Keep everyone focused on their piece, and no one knows how the puzzle fits together. Now let's talk about the big idea behind the name. Why call it Immaculate Constellation? Brown doesn't give a direct answer, but he hints that the term reflects the perfection of the recovered materials and the networked nature of the program itself. Think of it like a constellation of knowledge, scattered, brilliant points of data, all orbiting one central hidden truth. And that truth, he implies, is this: we are not alone. We have never been alone. And someone or something has been watching, visiting, and occasionally leaving things behind. Brown says some inside the program believe that craft aren't always piloted. Some seem autonomous. Others may be remotely operated, perhaps even dimensional projections of something that exists outside our space-time. And no, that's not just a wild theory. That's the kind of language used in actual internal documents, according to Brown. There's also the suggestion that some contact has already occurred, not with governments, but in isolated, highly controlled instances, possibly involving non-verbal interaction. He doesn't elaborate, and maybe he can't. But the implication is that the public disclosure of these encounters would be destabilizing, to say the least. So why keep it secret? According to Brown, the people running Immaculate Constellation don't see it as a cover-up. They see it as a containment strategy. Not of aliens, but of human fear. The big takeaway here: we're not at the beginning of this story. We're at the end of Act 2, where the curtain is starting to lift, and the audience is just beginning to realize that they're a part of the play. And if what Brown says is accurate, then everything we know about science, technology, history, and even ourselves is sitting in a warehouse somewhere, waiting for the world to catch up.
Like this video, subscribe, and click the bell for more. Do it now.
All right, we've heard the claims. We've seen the witness. We've laid the groundwork for something massive. But let's zoom out and face a tough question that stops this conversation dead in its tracks every time. If this is true, why aren't more people talking about it? Why hasn't the world stopped in its tracks? Why do we still treat alien disclosure like it belongs at the end of a news broadcast or in a sci-fi convention Q&A? Let's break it down, not with conspiracy theories, but with hard truths about how humans behave when the world they know starts to crack open. This might be the most basic human reason of all. Reality is fragile, and most people are just trying to hold theirs together. Think about what this means if it's real. Not just UAPs zipping around, but actual sustained interaction with non-human intelligences. Craft recovered, bodies examined, tech stored in vaults under the desert. That doesn't just rewrite science, it rewrites meaning. It means religion has to stretch or evolve. It means science has blind spots the size of galaxies. It means the institutions we trust to keep us in the loop might not have told us the whole story. And for many people, that's just way too much. So they don't dig deeper, not because they're lazy and not because they're closed-minded, but because acknowledging that kind of truth comes with an emotional cost. It's a confrontation with the unknown, and not everybody is ready to pay for that. This one's more subtle, but no less powerful. For decades, the topic of UFOs has been wrapped in ridicule. Aliens with big eyes, crop circles, beam me up jokes. It's become a part of pop culture and then got trapped there. And that's strategic. When you want to make something unbelievable, you don't censor it, you don't even mock it. You saturate the idea in parody until the real things become impossible to talk about seriously. Even now, when the Pentagon literally releases footage of objects defying those laws of motion, most people don't know how to react. Because the frame they've been handed is UFOs equals crazy. So people stay quiet, even the ones who believe, because they don't want to be laughed at. They don't want to risk their reputation, their credibility, or their social circle. Belief becomes private, hidden behind jokes and the what ifs, while the truth struggles to find daylight. And the result? Silence, smirks, and shrugs. And a story too big to tell, trapped behind nervous laughter. Let's be honest, humanity is tired. We're living through overlapping waves of disruption. Pandemic, war, economic stress, political chaos, climate anxiety, AI, you name it. So when someone says, hey, non-human intelligence has been here for decades and there's a program to manage the fallout, most people's brains go, yeah, cool, add it to the list. I'll deal with it after I finish my third shift and pick up the kids. It's not a lack of interest. It's triage. The mind says, what can I act on right now? And since UAPs feel distant, unprovable, unactionable, they get bumped down the queue. Matthew Brown hinted at this in his interview. The most powerful tool for denial isn't secrecy, it's distraction. And he's right. We're not ignoring the truth. We're drowning in too much truth. And the alien one, ironically, feels too far removed to matter. Okay, so you believe. You've watched the hearings, you've read the reports, you've connected the dots. Now what? You can't go visit a crash site. You can't demand access to a vault that doesn't officially exist. You can't verify the materials for yourself unless you're inside the inner circle. So the question becomes, if you can't do anything with this, why think about it? It's a legitimate frustration. Without a clear next step, belief can feel paralyzing. It's like staring at a locked door with no key, or worse, being told the key never existed. That lack of agency is a huge part of the silence. People don't talk about what makes them feel powerless. So they stay quiet. And that quiet becomes the new normal. This is where things get personal. Let's be real. Most people aren't rejecting the idea because it sounds impossible. They're rejecting it because they secretly suspect it might be true. That's a different kind of fear. Not fear of monsters or invasions, but fear of implications. Because if it's true, who else knows? What else have they kept from us? How long has it been going on? And what does it mean for our place in the cosmic food chain? Admitting that we're not alone means admitting we're not on top anymore. That's a deeply humbling and for some terrifying realization. So it's easier to joke, to dismiss, because we're facing the possibility that humanity isn't calling the shots. That changes everything. Finally, here's the kicker. Truth doesn't trend, at least not on its own. It doesn't come with a viral trailer. It doesn't have a PR firm. It doesn't always play well with 15-second clips. Meanwhile, the truth, especially this truth, is messy, unfolding, uneven. It doesn't arrive with polished headlines and perfect footage. It arrives in fragments, leaks, insider testimony, uncomfortable interviews like the one Matthew Brown just gave, and in a world where the algorithm decides what matters. This story loses every time because the platforms aren't built for nuance. They're built for dopamine. And this doesn't fit. So unless we push the story, unless creators, thinkers, seekers, people like you make it visible, it won't be. That's the challenge. But that said, it's also the opportunity. So here's the real reason the world isn't talking. Not because the truth isn't there, not because the evidence is too thin, but because truth has no marketing, and most people have stopped looking for it. But if you've made it this far, I'm guessing you're not one of them. And that's why this next part matters. Because the question now is, what would it actually take to break through? So far, we've seen a disconnect. Massive claims, credible voices, government hearings, and yet most of the world remains silent. So let's talk about what it would actually take to break through the fog, to cut through the noise, to push this topic into the spotlight where it belongs. Because disclosure doesn't just happen. Something or someone has to ignite it. Let's start simple. Because for most people, belief doesn't come from watching a press conference. It comes from personal experience. Imagine this. You're out shopping, walking the dog, heading home from work, and you see it in broad daylight. A massive structured object, not flickering, not blurred, just there, silently floating above your neighborhood. You're not alone. Thousands see it. Phones come out, live streams start. It hits social media in seconds. There's no weather balloon excuse this time. No glitchy infrared footage. No deniability. It's clear, public, and shared. Suddenly, it's not about, do I believe? It's about, what is this? And more importantly, why haven't we heard the truth before? That kind of moment has the power to cut through apathy. Because it's real and it's yours. Or imagine a different scenario. The US government, or maybe a coalition, steps forward on the record. A global address, cameras rolling, no vague language, no more phenomena we can't explain. Instead, they say it plainly. We have recovered craft not made by human hands. We have studied them, and we have evidence with photos, video, sensor data, radar, materials, even biology if it exists. This is no longer a conspiracy theory. It's a global pivot point. It would dominate the headlines, trigger emergency meetings, force science, faith, and politics to reorient in real time. Yes, it would be disruptive, but it would also be clarifying. Because for the first time, the public wouldn't just be hearing whispers. They'd be hearing the truth with proof. Not everything has to come from an official podium. Imagine an anonymous leak, but this time it's different. It's a clear multi-angle video, military footage, audio logs, an object moving at impossible speeds. No wings, no propulsion, no explanation. The metadata checks out. The origin is traceable. The visual quality is indisputable. And then a second leak and a third from different countries, different sources, all telling the same story. That's when the public starts to ask, how much of this have they been hiding? And for how long? One piece of footage won't do it. But a coordinated wave, that's something else. That's a reckoning. What if tomorrow a dozen insiders came forward, not just in the US, but around the world? Scientists, engineers, intelligence officers, all testifying together, all saying, yes, this is real. I worked on it. Here's my proof. Suddenly, it's not one rogue voice. It's a chorus. And that chorus can't be silenced, mocked, or ignored. We've seen what just one credible voice can do. Now imagine 12 or 20, all telling the same story. It would overwhelm the system and finally force the issue into full public view. Sometimes changes come not from the whistleblowers, but from the cosmos itself. Maybe the James Webb Telescope picks up a signal of structured energy fields around a distant planet. Maybe SETI finally detects a non-random signal, undeniable, intelligent, and repeating. Or maybe something crashes. Not in a desert, not on a military base, but in a forest near a city or off a busy highway. It's too public, too fast, and too late to cover up. Civilians film it before teams arrive. Footage goes viral before any agency can contain it. That's the tipping point. Not the moment of discovery, but the moment of transparency. But what if none of that happens? What if disclosure isn't a single event, but a movement led by you, by creators, researchers, podcasters, investigators, and people who are just curious? Because here's the truth. Information is already out there. In interviews, declassified reports, leaked documents, and first-hand accounts. It's not hidden. It's just not loud enough. And that's where you come in. Every time you share, comment, talk about it, you push this forward. Every viewer who asks a better question keeps the conversation alive. That's how critical mass is built. Not from government announcements, but from millions of people that start to care. You don't need a clearance to make a difference. You just need to be paying attention. Disclosure doesn't go viral on its own. But when you share it, talk about it, ask someone what they think, you help the truth faster than denial ever could. So, what would it take? It could be a craft. It could be a press conference. It could be another Matthew Brown. But maybe it's you. Let's stop asking if this is real and start talking about what comes next. Because if everything we've explored so far is accurate, and I believe the evidence now demands we treat it seriously, then we're not facing an event. We're facing a process. A slow, managed, uneven, but inevitable transition into a world where humanity is no longer alone and never has been. This isn't the future. It's already happening. And here's what that likely means for us as a global society. We're on the verge of a scientific reformation. Once the existence of non-human craft and the technology behind them is publicly acknowledged Our current understanding of physics, propulsion, and even biology will collapse and rebuild. Expect breakthroughs in energy systems, zero-point, field-based, or gravitational manipulation, alloys and isotopes engineered at atomic precision, space travel, propulsion methods that don't rely on combustion or thrust. Private corporations already hold fragments of this knowledge. Public disclosure will accelerate innovation dramatically, just like the internet did when it moved from defense to civilian hands. We're not talking about gradual evolution. We're talking about a leap forward, akin to going from horses to warp drives in less than a generation. The existential shock won't be as chaotic as some fear, but it will be deep. People won't abandon their faith, but they will re-examine it. Religions will adapt. Text will be reinterpreted. The idea of divine creation will expand to include life beyond Earth. This won't erase belief. It will challenge and enrich it. If anything, discovering we're not alone might unify spiritual paths, because the focus will move away from which God is right to why we exist in a shared, intelligent universe. And that conversation could lead us into a more compassionate, globally minded era, if we're willing to listen. Right now, only a select few hold the keys to this story, but that's changing. We'll see a global demand for transparency, not just about UAPs, but about secrecy in general. Who knew that? When did they know? And why didn't we get a say? Expect hearings, lawsuits, leaks, new oversight bodies, international coalitions, and a redistribution of power from centralized control to citizen awareness. Once this door opens, it won't just be about aliens. It will be about truth, and whether we still live in a world where people are trusted to handle it. People will change, quietly, then quickly. You'll see less arrogance about our place in the cosmos, more questioning of history, power, and purpose. A slow detachment from rigid dogma, political, religious, even scientific. Why? Because once we admit we're not alone, and possibly never were, everything shrinks in comparison. Our conflicts, our borders, our arguments, they all start to look small. And the biggest shock of all, most people will be okay. Disclosure won't break us. It will refocus us, because now we're a part of something bigger. And that truth, unsettling as it is, will eventually feel liberating. The road ahead is cultural, not technological. The tech, it's coming. The science, already shifting. But the real change will be the cultural change. How do we educate without fear-mongering? How do we include everyone, not just the academics or insiders? How do we build new myths, new meaning, new stories that incorporate this next phase of being human? Here's the answer, one conversation at a time. This is where creators, thinkers, and ordinary people come in. You don't need a PhD or a telescope. You need curiosity. You need to ask questions. You need to share what you learn and listen when others do the same. That's how societies change. Not overnight, but collectively. So, what happens now? Well, we're already in it. The slow disclosure, the leaks, the testimony, the reconditioning of public thought. From here, you can expect more insiders stepping forward, bolder media coverage, international voices joining the chorus, and eventually a breaking point. Not one explosive event, but a cumulative realization. And when that hits, we'll be ready. Not because we've solved every mystery, but because we're brave enough to face them. So what does this mean for humanity? It means we're growing up. It means we're shredding the illusion that we're in the center of it all. And that's not terrifying, it's transformational. Let's stop sugarcoating it. We're living through the most important shift in human history. And most people still don't get it. They're distracted, dismissive, or worse, can be indifferent. But you're here, and that matters. Because if you're watching this, you're already part of something bigger. The evidence is here. The truth isn't waiting. It's already breaking through. Piece by piece, whistleblower by whistleblower. And yet, too many people still laugh, scroll, or look away. That has to change. We can't wait for permission anymore. We need to get louder, and we need to be heard. So next time someone rolls their eyes at this topic, I want you to say, think, question, believe. This isn't theory anymore. It's evidence. It's happening. And you deserve to know. Because this isn't just about aliens. It's about truth. It's about humanity finally waking up. We're being called to evolve, not just in what we know, but in how we live, how we connect, and how we lead one another through uncertainty into truth. And here's the part that excites me the most. You can help by sharing this, by talking to your mates, by sparking just one moment of curiosity in someone who's never looked up before. When we build this movement together, we all win, we all grow, and we all move closer to the kind of world we deserve to live in. So if you've ever felt like you're alone in this, you're really not. We're growing every day, and I can't wait to see who will join us next. And this isn't just a show. This is Existence Unknown. And this is a cause that matters. So let's make your voice count, stand with the truth, and help turn whispers into a roar the world can't ignore. Once again, I'm Mike, and this is Existence Unknown. Stay curious, and always think, question, and believe. And share what you know with those who are willing to listen. Bye for now.